It's a great pleasure for me this afternoon to introduce Yves Punie, that is the acting head of the unit Human Capital and Employment of the European Commission Joint Research Center. It's located in Sevilla. And Yves working on digital learning skill since 2005. And actually spend most of, let's say, 15 years maybe or so to develop a framework on digital competencies for citizen, educators, and also organization. But the unit developed also framework for personal, social, and learning to learn, and entrepreneurship framework, competence framework. And together with some tools that can be used, for example, to foster self-reflection. Very recently, they also produced another framework called Green Comp. Yves has been also professor at the Free University of Brussels, and he also a PhD in social science. So he is going to give a talk on shifting to competence-based learning and digital education in Europe. A view from European research and policy. For stage view.
Okay, thank you, Carlos, for this kind introduction. And hello, everybody. Warm welcome from me from Sevilla. Unfortunately, I cannot be with you physically, due to time constraint. But it's a pleasure to be able to contribute, and thank you to the organization as well for inviting me for this keynote, indeed, on shifting to competence-based learning and digital education in Europe. So a view from European research and policy, enabling me to share with you some of the results and the studies that we've been doing to try to support European policies towards the move towards digital education and competence-based learning. So maybe very briefly to tell to you who we are, because maybe not everybody is familiar with the Joint Research Center. So the Joint Research Center is part of the European Commission. We are the internal kind of science and knowledge service of the Commission, and our mission is to support European policies with that independent evidence and advice throughout the whole policy cycle. So we are a research institute supporting policies. So we are in a such policy neutral. So we don't have a policy agenda of its own. So the policymakers are the European Commission colleagues, of course, in Brussels and in other sites. But we support them with research, with study and analysis in many, many different areas. The GRC is quite a big institute. We have 3,000 people in different locations, as you can see on the map. So we are based in Sevilla. We have people in Ispra, in Karlsruhe, in Geel, in Petten, and also in Brussels. And they work on many, many different issues. We work on energy, on climate, on agriculture, on transport, on nuclear waste. But then in Sevilla, we do more, as you could say, socioeconomic studies. And in Sevilla, we have done a unit. It's called the Human Capital and Employment Unit, which I'm leading now, with about 30 people. So we work on education, skills, and employment-related issues already since 2005, and we have a long list of publications and studies in the area, more than 150 during these 15 years. So if you understand a bit the context where I come from, then let me briefly introduce to you what I'm going to argue today. So first of all, highlight a bit of the skills and the digital skills challenges and link to European policies to set the context. Then I want to discuss a bit more our experiences related to studies and understanding the COVID-19 implications for education and digital education, because I think this is also quite a game changer, which we need to take into account to understand the shift to digital education and also to smart learning systems. Then refer to the competence frameworks and tools that we have, and to show you some of the results of the use of these tools. And finally, some remarks on how to put this into practice, what we call into action, if I have enough time for that. Otherwise, we keep it later on for the discussion. So, main digital skills challenges in Europe. I'll start with a couple of numbers, data, which I think are quite significant to understand a bit the challenges we are facing. About 70 million Europeans lack sufficient reading, writing, and numeracy skills. Still today in our current day modern society, 70 million. That's the size of a big country in Europe. It's the size of France. Who people who lack these skills throughout Europe. It's quite significant, I would say. 24% of the EU population has no upper secondary education diploma. And we also know that the student underachievement in basic skills, measured through PISA, is actually without improvement during the last 10 years. So it still remains about 22% of all students who in PISA who are underachieving in these kind of basic skills. And the challenging thing really is, of course, that this has not been improved during the last 10 years. Maybe also to your surprise or not, but still 11% of Europeans have never used the internet. And almost half of the EU population and 32% of the EU labor force, they have insufficient digital skills. And we'll come back to that, of course, in a second. And almost half of them, 42% of those who have no digital skills, are actually in a situation of unemployment. So these are kind of big major challenges. And in addition, I would like to argue, because very often people think about, okay, but all our young people and people are digital natives, but that doesn't not necessarily mean that they also digitally competent. And I'll explain the definition of digital competence later. So these are a couple of numbers now, just to highlight the major challenges we are facing with. And we know that also at the European level. And I wanted to share them with you a bit, the kind of the initiatives at the European level that try to tackle these challenges and try to provide answers to that. And one of the most recent one, which I think is quite significant, from January 2022, is the European Declaration on Digital Rights and Principles for the Digital Decade. This deals with many different issues, put people at the center, deals with solidarity and inclusion, with freedom of choice, participation, safety and security, and also with sustainability. But there is a specific section on digital education and digital skills, and it says the following: everyone has the right to education, training, and lifelong learning, and should be able to acquire all basic and advanced digital skills, with a commitment to ensure that our education and training systems have digital connectivity, infrastructure, and tools, to ensure that everybody, learners and teachers, have digital skills and competences, enabling us to take part in the economy, society, and in democracy. This is not just only about employment-related issues, but giving everyone also the possibility to participate in upskilling and reskilling, because we also know that through digitalization, the nature of work, of jobs, and of tasks are changing. And this requires a more permanent kind of upskilling and reskilling kind of initiatives. So around these principles, of course, there are many different actions and initiatives and policies being developed. But this is a bit kind of the big guiding kind of principle that the Commission wanted to put forward as a declaration on the rights and principles for the digital decade, acknowledging that these are very important challenges for today and for the near future. More specifically, then, this is turned into what at the European level now we call the digital decade, digital targets for 2030. This was released in March 2021, and this deals with skills, with infrastructure, with business, and with government. But on the top, you see their skills. There are two targets: 80% of adults by 2030 with at least basic level of digital skills. Today we are at 54. So there's still a way to go. And also in terms of advanced skills, 20 million of ICT specialists, we should have, including gender convergence. And that's, of course, also a particularly important one. Well, today we are 8.4 million ICT specialists, so we need to go to 20, but 81% of them are males. which is not a good representation, of course, of our society and our economy. So they're also a major challenge and a major target to be reached for the future. In addition, at the European level, you have the Digital Education Action Plan, which is more specific, which puts a number of specific actions to tackle these challenges. On the one hand, challenges related to education and training systems. On the other hand, challenges related to digital skills. And this is the guiding principle for the coming years, because this plan runs from 2021 to 2027, so for the next 5 years still. In addition, we have the key competences for lifelong learning, which is a key commitment from at the European level with the latest document from, it's a council recommendation from 2018. And also, which I think is also important if we want to speak about more competence-based learning, the communication, the recommendation on blended learning for high quality and inclusive primary and secondary education. Of course, there are more plans, more initiatives at the European level, also related to higher education, for example, and the new skills agenda. But I think these three are really key if you want to understand what's happening at European level related to the shift to digital education and more competence-based learning. So if we understand a bit the context and the challenges and initiatives that we want to do, let's then go a bit more into content and try to see a bit what we learned from COVID-19 and the massive shift to digital education. This happened, of course, during the spring 2020 COVID-19 lockdown. The schools closed, and you could argue if this is a game changer, yes or no. But it is certainly something that 5 years ago, we would never have we could not have imagined that this would take place. And now we had experienced the situation, unfortunately, of course. We're now recovering, but this can be a game changer for digital education. Most schools were obliged to close their premises. Around 1.5 billion students in almost 200 countries had to move to remote schooling. And of course, in the beginning, many schools did not know what technology, what methodologies were the most appropriate to be used for learning, for teaching, in terms of effectiveness, security, accessibility. And we also saw that the great variety of readily available technologies were used, many of them which were not intentionally designed for teaching and learning. And of course, we've done a number of studies at the GRC level to understand the pre-COVID situation, during COVID, now after COVID, and we released many different reports. For example, there's a number of case studies also in 5 countries, in Denmark, in Spain, in Estonia, in Hungary, and also one in Romania, where the conference is hosted. These are, you can freely find them on the internet. So if you type the school year 2020-2021, in Denmark, for example, during the pandemic, you find these results. But what I would like to share with you is a couple of big messages that come out of all these different studies that we've been doing on COVID, which I think is important also to, if we want to design and develop kind of smart learning systems and more inclusive digital education. I would like to start with this quote from a 6-year-old girl from Norway. She said, "The digital aspect of homeschooling was that tasks were distributed digitally rather than done digitally." And I think this is a really, really impressive and a very smart quote in my point of view, no? Because what this young lady, actually, this girl, pronounced is something that we've been arguing for in the literature and many studies during the last 10 years, that this is not just about digital technology, but this is about the digital pedagogy. This is about new ways of learning, new ways of teaching, new ways of assessment, using the full potential of digital technology, rather than just imagining that we shift the analog practices to the digital practices. And I hope you agree with me, but I think it was really, really, I mean, a very powerful quote by this young girl of 6 years old. Then a bit more studies related to that is actually one of the key issues that emerged is student well-being. which was on the agenda already for quite some time in the past, no, but not so prominently, I think. And during COVID, we saw that many students, they struggled to adjust to the online learning environments, causing them to feel stressed. Actually, also many parents felt stressed as well. And here you see some data which are published in the Education and Training Monitor 2021, where you see Belgium, UK, Germany, Netherlands, Czech Republic, and Greece, where you see that a high level in Belgium, more than 70% agree with the statement that many students felt stressed during this period. Also, as I just said, the parents, of course, no, because this was maybe also something new now that parents are much strongly involved in education than they were before, because obviously it was taking place in the home, in their apartment, in their house. And both children and parents, they worried a lot about the negative impact on education during the school closure period. And there again, you see some data which both indicate that both children and parents are quite concerned about the negative impact on education and on the future of the educational performance, of course, of their children. Then a very important topic, of course, is the effect of COVID-19 on school closures on student achievement. And we've looked at many different countries and collected evidence from many different studies. And I think there is somehow consensus that in most countries, apart from 3 that we find there was Australia, Denmark, and Japan, the COVID-19 school closure led to a learning loss. And also, and this is probably even more significant, that the learning loss was greater among the most vulnerable students, meaning those students of a more lower socioeconomic background, where their parents have lower studies, people are unemployed people. So those who are socioeconomically less privileged had a bigger learning loss than before. And that as such, of course, is not a surprise, because we know in education that educational performance has already also been in many countries strongly influenced by socioeconomic background. So this was again reinforced during the school closures. Apparently, most of the students lost ground in maths, and this penalized specifically younger students in primary education. The studies are less clear on the gender differences in terms of impacting learning performance. So there are more kind of heterogeneous effects. But on the other hand, just to highlight also a bit of the opportunities that also emerged during COVID-19 school closures, to argue that indeed teaching and learning did take place under this emergency situation. This happened. And, you could say that this is quite of a revolution, no, because this had to be done suddenly, unprepared, but learning and teaching still take place, although with a lot of improvisation, but it still did take place. And especially many people many students and teachers were experiencing with new ways of digital and online learning. And actually also in our studies, we've been able to show or find out that many children showed great motivation actually to learn new skills and creatively use digital devices for school projects. And from an open online consultation launched when they launched the Digital Education Action Plan, 62% of the people said that they had felt that they had improved their digital skills during the COVID-19 crisis. There again, I think I have a nice quote from from Romania, a 10-year-old boy, indicating a bit how swiftly also this kind of shift could go to online and digital learning. So he said, during the lockdown, I did my piano classes online on the laptop. We have a special piano system. We have a mixer. We put the piano in the mixer, the headphones and the laptop, and it works. And the teacher hears both the sound of the piano and me through the microphone, which was kind of, a new experience. But you see that it can also work, and that learning did take place there as well. But challenges are there, of course, and we know many of them, and I'll try to summarize a couple of them. More broadly, so not just about learning outcomes, but remote schooling did not favor all children equally. But we also observed somehow what you could call digital fatigue, digital tiredness, because obviously children were very active using digital technologies, but now suddenly also during the day, during the school hours, they had to use intensively also digital tools. And this led somehow to a bit of a tiredness with digital technologies as well. And also we know, for example, know that it was not obvious to follow 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, and 5 hours of lessons in front of a computer, which is a new kind of activity, and this is a bit of a challenge. What we also found out that there's a need for more interactive and engaging learning designs, because, and that comes back to the earlier quote, no, that actually many things were just shifted. Analog activities were just shifted to the digital, but they did not really engage and develop more interactive kind of learning designs, more engaging kind of learning designs, which make use of the potential of digital technologies. Clearly, children, of course, missed the social aspects of schooling. And also, what was a key challenge was the digital competence of teachers, of students, and of parents as well. And I will come back to that later. And also the digital capacity of schools, because, for example, some studies have shown that those schools who were already quite active with digital technologies before the COVID breakout were better prepared to deal with these challenges during the emergency situation. Those who are not very equipped and not very active before had to struggle and struggled much more than the other schools. But also one of the challenges, I think, is what I highlight here is the holistic kind of approach. No? So this has to deal with teaching and learning practices, but it also has to deal with assessment. It has to deal with leadership. It has to deal with strategies. It has to deal with continuous professional development of teachers. So I mean, it's kind of the holistic element that was missing a lot, because people were going much more kind of anecdotal and isolated, and not from a holistic kind of view, making the shift to digital and online learning. Just to confirm with some pilot data that we did on MOOCs, on massive open online learning, massive open online courses, that actually the higher level of the digital competence of the learners, the more likely they are to do MOOCs, and the more likely they are also to complete MOOCs and to complete them with a certificate. So that's what the graph is indicating on the slide. Just to confirm again that digital skills are key for online learning, and I think also for a shift to competence-based learning as well. We cannot assume that all our learners have these digital skills already when we design kind of new smart learning systems. Then, if we take these lessons into account, I would like to share with you one of the tools and the frameworks that we developed which actually try to deal with these challenges. And here you see an overview of all these different tools and competence frameworks and tools that we have. So these are, on the one hand, at the individual level. On the other hand, dedicated to professionals, to teachers, and also to organizations, to schools at the organizational level. So we have a number of frameworks targeted at individuals, and I'll explain them in a second a bit more. So we have the Digital Competence Framework for Citizens, DIGCOMP. We have EnterComp, LiveComp, and GreenComp, which are targeted at individuals. Then we developed a specific framework for teachers, for educators, the DIGCOMP Edu. And on the basis of that one, we developed now a tool which is called Selfie for Teachers tool. It's a self-reflection tool, which I'll explain a bit more in a second as well. And for schools and the educational organizations, we developed a conceptual model called DIGCOMP.org, DIGCOMP, Digital Capacity Competence for Educational Organizations. Also a framework for higher education, OpenEdu. And the DIGCOMP.org led to the Selfie self-reflection tool for schools. I will give you a bit more details on these in a second. So why do we develop all these frameworks and tools? So this is basically to come back to what I said also from the COVID studies. No, this is to support, to develop capacities for the digital transformation of education and training, and for addressing 21st century skills challenges. So what are these frameworks? So these are what we call reference frameworks, providing an overall complete and a shared understanding at European level, providing somehow a common language. And this is important to understand, because if you look at it from a European point of view, we are dealing with the issue of subsidiarity, which means that actually the European Commission does not have any legislative power in the area of education and skills. So this is left to the member states, and many member states, this is organized. Education laws and curricula are organized at the regional level. So what then the Commission can do is to foment mutual exchange, learning from each other, and to have somewhere kind of a common language. And that is what these reference frameworks actually try to do. They usually consist of a conceptual model. They also have proficiency levels and also self-assessment modules. And maybe also important to highlight, because we speak about competence frameworks, meaning that we define competences following the Council recommendation on key competences for lifelong learning as a combination of knowledge, skills, and attitudes. So you need to know something, but you also need to be able to apply your knowledge. This is related to skills. And the attitudes part is also very important, because you might know, for example, that you're breaching a copyright online, but if you're not acting upon it, then your knowledge stays there without any use. So it's also important to have attitudes related to that. So why are these? I mean, how are these frameworks used throughout Europe? So they're used in many member states to revise curricula, for example, to review the curricula on digital skills. They are used for teacher training, for self-assessment or for assessment, to develop policies at national and regional level, to develop practical initiatives for job seekers, also inspire certification and measurement issues. So these are quite widely used, you might say, at the European level, but also outside Europe as well. So to to become a bit more concrete, we can start maybe with the digital competence framework for citizens, DigComp. And I'm actually very pleased to announce that in March this year, a couple of months ago, we released a new version, DigComp 2.2, where we summarized, of course, the framework as it is, but we also added new examples of knowledge, skills, and attitudes related to emerging technologies. But just first, maybe to share with you the definition, because sometimes people think that digital competence is about technical skills. But if you look at the definition, you clearly see that it's not just about technical skills. So this is about confident, critical, and responsible use of and engagement with the full range of digital technologies for learning, at work, and for participation in society. So this is quite of a broad, maybe a bit of a generic kind of definition, but it really highlights the confident issues, the critical issues, and the responsible use. So it's not just about simple technical use of digital technologies. And this DigComp framework, maybe you heard about it or not, I can give you a bit more detail here. So the conceptual model consists of 5 competence areas and 21 specific competences. So the first area is about competences related to information and data literacy. So that means being able to find information, but also being able to critically assess, evaluate, and understand information, and also to manage your data. This is about communication and collaboration, about interacting through digital technologies, sharing of information and content, citizenship, but also things like netiquette, knowing about the norms and the values of interacting with other people through digital technologies. And it's also about managing your digital identity. Digital content creation, developing digital content, also knowing about copyright and licenses, and also programming is part of this competence area as well. Safety issues, protecting devices, protecting personal data and privacy, even more important today than ever, protecting health and well-being, and also protecting the environment, which is also very important, of course. And the 5th area is problem solving, solving technical problems, identifying needs and technological responses to these problems, creatively using digital technologies, and also being able to update continuously your digital competences, because there again, the idea is that this is not just something that you acquire once and you have it forever, since of course our the digital economy and technologies evolves very fast. these kind of competences we also need to relearn and reskill and upskill almost continuously. So this is part of lifelong learning that we need to do during all our life. This is the conceptual model. Then we develop specific kind of learning outcomes, also some proficiency levels, and some more examples of how you can put this into practice. And this is what we did actually with the 2.2 update. We added more than 250 new examples in collaboration with a wide stakeholder community of knowledge, skills, and attitudes to address to make sure that the DIGCOM curriculum and course materials stays up to date. So what we introduced or added more to the framework is examples of copyright and intellectual property rights, fact-checking online content and its sources, citizens interacting with AI systems and data, green and sustainability aspects of interacting with digital technologies, well-being and safety, remote work and hybrid work, and also digital accessibility. So around these themes, we developed new examples of knowledge, skills, and attitudes in the DIGCOM 2.2 update. Just to highlight, because when I said about the fact-checking online content and its sources, just to demonstrate how important this is becoming now in our digital world, we have some data from the European Household Survey from 2021, asking if citizens do fact-checking of online content on news sites or social media. And you see that almost at the EU average, almost half of all citizens said they have encountered untrue or doubtful online content or information in the last 3 months. Which is of course quite significant now, and it again confirms that this is a key issue that we have to deal with. Around 23% said they had checked the truthfulness of online information or content, and about 15% at the EU level said that they did not check the truthfulness as they already knew that the information was not reliable. Just to confirm that that issue is high on the European agenda and very, very important to deal with. Then, to give you a bit of an idea how this looks like in detail, these examples of knowledge, skills, and attitudes. And I highlighted there some examples on artificial intelligence, on algorithms. I don't know if you can see the slides, but I mean, just to highlight, for example, at the level of knowledge, this says that, for example, being aware that AI algorithms might not be configured to provide only the information the user wants, because they embody commercial or political messages. They want you to watch or buy something, so they want to opinion you something, and they can also have negative consequences on stereotypes and misinformation, for example. So being aware of that, which is a knowledge statement. Then a skill statement is that you know how to analyze and critically evaluate search results and social media activity streams, identify their origins, distinguish fast fact reporting from opinion, and to determine whether outputs are truthful or have other kind of limitations. So that's kind of a skill statement. And an attitude statement is that, for example, that you're inclined to ask critical questions in order to evaluate the quality of online information, and that you're concerned about purposes behind spreading and amplifying disinformation. So this is and we have more than 250 statements of this kind in the new DIGCOM update. And these kind, as I said before, these kind of statements, they can be used by teachers to teach, or in the curricula, to revise the curricula, for self-reflection, and for many kind of other purposes. The DIGCOM framework is also used to compose and to have the European Digital Skills Indicator, and where we have now the most recent data from 2021, which says that at European level, 54% of Europeans have at least basic digital skills, which means that we still have a big chunk of not having these basic digital skills. And you see there in dark green, 26% above basic level, and 27% which has a basic level. But if you look at the graph, what you see also is that there are major differences between the EU member states. You know, where in some countries, like in the Netherlands, we're almost 80%, and in Finland and in Ireland and in Denmark. But then other countries where the level of basic digital skills, such as unfortunately Romania, which goes down until below 30%. So this is definitely also something that we have to take into account, and we have to be aware of, that there are huge differences still between the member states and also within the member states. And these differences, for example, are also related to the position of people. If you see the difference between students, which are green on the graph, they are of course at the higher level of at least having basic digital skills. Then unemployed, self-employed family workers, which are the blue dots, and the unemployed are the purple dots. And there again, you see that they go much below 50%. And this kind of differentiation again, which is something we have to be very much aware of within the countries and between the different countries at European level, and which we have to address also if we want to develop kind of smart learning systems. Just to also highlight that now there's new digital skills indicator data. So these are Eurostat data that everybody can download, can look for, and can use and can analyze, which now for the first time allows for a much more fine-grained kind of data analysis, meaning that because this is structured according to the 5 DIGCOMP areas that I mentioned before, and then it calculates it in terms of how many of these 5 areas you are basic or above basic or below basic. And so you have like no internet, no skills, then you have limited, narrow overall level of skills, low level, basic level, and above basic level of skills that we can now compute for European digital skills indicator. And in addition to that, I should also highlight that in the Digital Education Action Plan, there is now an initiative, and actually we are going to launch a feasibility study to develop a European digital skills certificate, which could hopefully help us also deal with the challenges related to digital skills and the low level of basic digital skills of the EU population. To develop such a certificate that may be recognized and accepted by governments, employers, and other stakeholders across Europe. So this is not yet, done. So we are doing a feasibility study. So we're going to see how such a system, such a European digital skills certificate can be and should be established, allowing Europeans to indicate their level of digital competences corresponding to the DIGCOMP framework proficiency levels. And we hope that this is something, well, for the coming years to be realized, and that can help us, as I said before, address digital skills challenges. So if you allow me, I'm going to take a little bit of water, and you can take also a breath as well. Because I would now like to go and mention you the second framework and self-assessment tool that we have, which is, so we move from individuals, digital competence for individuals, to the digital competence for teachers, for educators. And we have now launched since last year what's called Selfie for Teachers, which is a self-reflection tool for teachers' digital competence. The target is school teachers, but we are now extending it also to early childhood education. We also have an experimental version for higher education as well. And this is now already available. So we developed the tool, the self-reflection questions. We did piloting, testing, psychrometrics to ensure that this is fully scientifically sound and reliable and valid. And it's now offered in all the EU languages, because if you want to address teachers in Europe, you need to offer this tool also in their own language. The tool is now, since it only was launched in October 2021, more than 44,000 users, but is being promoted more and more by the ministries of education, by regional authorities, also by training institutions and by universities. And this tool has a scientific underpinning. So it's based on the DIGCOMP EDU framework, the Digital Competence Framework for Educators, which we published in November 2017, which was downloaded for more than 34,000 downloads, available in more than 10 languages. And also we have a check-in experimental tool, which has more than 300,000 users already doing a self-reflection on to understand their strengths and weaknesses related to their digital competences for teaching and learning. So this DIGCOMP EDU framework has 6 areas and 22 specific competences. So it ranges from professional engagement and using digital technologies by teachers for professional collaboration, for CPD, for organizational communication, using digital resources for teaching, for learning, teaching and learning practices, also fomenting, for example, collaborative learning, self-regulated learning, assessment strategies, empowering learnings, has to deal with accessibility, with personalization, actively engaging learners, and then the 6th area is to ensure that we facilitate our learners to acquire these digital competences, and then of course these competences reflect the 5 areas of the DIGCOMP framework. So there's of course a connection between the two frameworks, but these are the competences that teachers need to acquire to be able to efficiently and effectively use digital technologies for teaching and learning and assessment. And we developed on this Selfie for Teachers items. I don't think you can read it, but I want to highlight below is that there are 6 proficiency levels that we developed from A1 to C2. So this mirrors the European language level kind of approach. And it starts from A1 newcomer, which means that you are aware of digital technologies. A2 explorer, I have tried them occasionally. B1, I'm starting and I'm using digital technologies for my teaching and for my learning. B2, more expert kind of approach. I'm able to analyze, to reflect and redesign and reuse digital learning opportunities. C1, I help others and also involve students in the design of learning opportunities. And the highest level is C2, that you initiate, you innovate, and you contribute and you develop new things related to digital technologies for teaching and learning. So these are kind of the 6 proficiency levels that we established. And actually, if you do this self-reflection, you will get a self-reflection report with your results indicating at which level you are from A1 to B2. Also then, according to the 6 areas of the DIGCOMP EDU framework. And then within the areas also more specific details on the specific competences. And it also, the self-reflection report also includes some suggestions to further develop your digital competence. So from that angle, it's important because, you know, it leads also somehow to action after the self-reflection. What do teachers say about the tool? The tool allowed me to reflect on my teaching practices, bring to light my strengths and weaknesses in using technology. The visuals helped me to see the results easily. I could see the areas where I needed to improve my skills. I got tips that helped me plan my activities in the next year. So the secondary school teacher and a teacher education says, this is an excellent tool to help teachers gauge personally where they are in terms of their abilities to use these technologies in their teaching, and it is coming at the right time. Then, when we move from individuals to teachers, we move. I have some results here also to share with you. For example, in Andalusia and the region, the south region of Spain, we have some representative data indicating that, for example, more than 88,000 teachers have done this self-reflection, and you can see there that the majority is an A2 level, 36%, in addition to B1 level, 34%. But also, for example, that even less than 1% is at the highest level, and almost 10% is at the low A1 levels. We also have similar data, and because we did and we're going to publish this report in a couple of weeks' time, I think in 2 weeks' time. We did a representative sample of the digital competence of academics in Spain. And there you can see, of course, no surprise that the level of competences is higher compared to secondary primary education teachers at academic level, where you see that the majority is in B1 and B2, and also quite a significant group in C2. So the more highest kind of levels. Of course, this is self-reflection, self-perception. So, you know, there might always be a bit of a bias that people inflate a bit what they think they can do. But what we did, for example, we asked them to indicate before they do the self-reflection at what level of competence they think they are, according to the 6 levels. And then we can compare it with the results after doing the self-reflection. And this was, of course, a very interesting exercise. But you see that, you know, in global terms, very often they coincide. Just to highlight, maybe also here that there are age differences, and obviously, the older the academics get, unfortunately, the lower their level of digital competence is becoming. So that's, as you can see on the right graph below. Then we move to the third tool, which is Selfie, Self-Reflection for Schools Digital Capacity, which is a free, online, easy to use and customizable self-reflection tool for schools, which was launched in 2018. We now have, and we are very proud of it, that 3.5 million users undertaking this self-reflection since 2018 from almost 30,000 schools. It's available in 40 languages and used across 89 countries. We also have a version for Selfie work-based learning to address vocational schools since October 2021, involving in-company trainers. And this is also based on this conceptual model, DICOMP.org. And just to highlight, no, because sometimes people have some misconceptions about this self-reflection. So this selfie is not a survey. This is a self-reflection exercise for schools to be done by schools, teachers, and students. It generates, in the same way as with Selfie for teachers, a school report for reflection, for monitoring, and for developing an action plan at school level. And it also provides, by the way, a certificate of participation. Data are, of course, anonymous, and they are owned by schools. And just to give you a bit more detail there, so the questions of the Selfie tool are divided into 8 areas: leadership, collaboration and networking, infrastructure, continuous professional development, pedagogy, pedagogy implementation, assessment practices, and again, student digital competences. And we did actually last year also a representative sample of the digital capacity of Spanish schools using the Selfie. And there, for example, what you see is that some strengths and weaknesses, where overall infrastructure and internet connection in Spanish schools is perceived to be as quite well. Digital technologies are used a lot to prepare classes, but they are not used a lot for collaboration between students and also between teachers, and also virtual learning environments are not used a lot. And assessment practices are not so widespread using digital technologies for assessment. And also, for example, the issue of critical information and critical analysis of online information and of reliable sources was perceived as weaker compared to the overall digital competence of students. Also, collaboration and networking using digital technologies was not so strong. Barriers related to the digital education in Spain by schools say, okay, lack of time of teachers, insufficient digital equipment, lack of funding, low digital competence of teachers, unreliable and slow internet connection, school space restrictions, limited or no technical support, and the low level of digital competence of students. But the red ones are the bigger ones, and the green ones in this case are less important. Does it make a difference if you do the self-reflection? So of course, self-reflection is a process that takes time, and this is about a mentality change, which is very difficult to measure. You know, so I mean, because sometimes people say, okay, what's the impact of this? What does it improve? Does it improve teachers' digital competence, students' digital competence? Does it improve learning outcomes? But this is a process and a mentality change that takes time to realize, and also is difficult to measure. But for example, we looked at this, and we are going to release a report in the coming months on a qualitative impact study, where we see the direct impact of selfie is using it as a diagnostic tool. Then you can have secondary impacts where it is used as a basis for follow-up actions, for example, developing a digital action plan in the school, and then of course impact of these follow-up actions. But overall, of course, the impact depends a lot on context and implementation. But what we also find out, for example, of a social network analysis at the regional level, that a network of champions can make a difference in the shift towards digital education in a region. So to almost finalize, because I also think we are good in timing now, so we have another 5 minutes or so, or are we, well,
5 minutes.
5 minutes? 1 minute?
5 minutes is okay.
Okay, so very quickly, so to put these things into action, again, so we have this range of competence frameworks. We also have the Green Com framework, the European Sustainability Competence Framework, which has 4 competence areas and 12 competences. I'm not going to give you the details now. We have the LifeCom framework, personal, social, and learning to learn competence framework. 3 areas: personal, social, and learning to learn, 9 competences. And my colleague, Ariana Sala, will be in the panel later on, and she will give you a bit more details about the LifeComp framework and the related teaching strategies of LifeComp. And we also have already the entrepreneurship framework as well, which was published in 2016. So, and these come back to this council recommendation on key competences for lifelong learning. No, and I wanted to show you this graph to illustrate that these competences are somehow connected. So they're not isolated. So they go together and they need to be combined, for example, to promote employability, social inclusion, active citizenship. We've been doing a lot more than just developing these competence frameworks and tools. So we published case studies, how they are used. So Intercomp into action, DigComp into action, the Intercomp playbook, to learn from others working in employability, Intercomp at work, DigComp at work, teaching practices related to LifeComp, and also a resource bank, which we're going to release on experiential learning activities for the production, for the joint promotion of key competences in VET education. So a lot of accompanying kind of measures, examples, studies, case studies, MOOCs, and guides in different formats to put all these kind of competences into practice, because this is in the end where it matters, no? Because you don't want to just develop a framework at the theoretical level, but this has to be used and applied so that, educational practices are in the end having an impact and a change. So, okay. Thank you for attention.
Thank you, Yves, for your enlightening talk that provide us an overview of the huge amount of work that has been done by the unit during the last 15 years or so. So now the talk is open for discussion, and I see that Timo Leinonen has a question, raised his hand. So please.
Thank you for the presentation. Super interesting and super important work what you are doing. I was just thinking, like you mentioned the MOOCs, and you also mentioned that who are those. There's a lot of research who are succeeding with the MOOCs and the higher digital skills, but also the higher educational level of the people correlates with the success with the MOOCs. And a bit of this, your self-reflection material reminds me a lot of kind of MOOC approach too, where the idea is often to consider that if you just provide the materials, people will find it and will learn. And just from our experience in Finland, when we introduced the coding or programming to the national curriculum, we started an online classes for teachers, and we're able to reach about 40% of the teachers by a proper program where there were video conference sessions and something where people got together to study and then get a certification. So it reminded much more like a classical teacher training program or in-service training program as such. And I was thinking that I understand that in European level, we talk about much more bigger numbers than in case of Finland and asking something like Cuban literacy campaign in the 1960s miracle to be made in Europe. But somehow I think we could consider that too, that could we organize a teacher in-service program, which is human contacts, and a program where they synchronize sessions with the educators or teachers who will help and motivate the participants to develop their skills. What do you think about that, or has this been discussed in your research center at all?
No. I mean, we looked at many different things, no, and I fully agree what you argue. What we have been also seeing are very interesting examples of experiments in Spain to be able to reach teachers, because this is also very much of a challenge, as you said also, no, because very often, I mean, we need to get the motivation of the teachers to follow these kind of courses, and they've been developing what they call mini MOOCs or kind of nano MOOCs, which are very short kind of learning experiences of 15 to 20 minutes, which you can do on your mobile phone maybe when you're waiting for the bus or whatever, and to reach out, and they try to develop that on the digital competence framework. With all these digital competence, they developed kind of small kind of nano MOOCs, small kind of learning events to be done on your mobile for these 21 competences. And these are kind of very interesting ways, I think, to reach out and because otherwise we very often assume that it becomes part of kind of the traditional way of providing continuous professional development and traditional courses, which are not always so attractive, no, so teachers. And I think these new formats seem to be very promising and can attract more teachers than with traditional kind of courses.
One short question for you before to switch to the other room, and I would like to know in your feeling, which do you think will be the highest barrier that you are going to encounter in the future to, let's say, improve the European situation as far as the competence are concerned?
That's a very big question, no, Carlo?
I know,
but no. I mean, and I think it comes back to what I said before, and that is motivation. I mean, how can we motivate people, ordinary citizens, and also teachers? But teachers, of course, as professionals, they can be motivated a little bit more, or incentivized a bit more easy, no? But how can we motivate people to ensure that they develop these kind of critical digital competences that they need in everyday life? And this is for me the biggest challenge, because you can design the most fantastic courses on developing digital skills, but if you do not reach the people, they're not aware of it, they don't know about it, and very often they drop down after the first experience. After the first 5 or 10 minutes, they drop out, because this does not really resonate with what they can do, what they know, with their experiences, no? So for me, motivation and how to engage people to become aware that this is so crucial for their life as well, no, is one of the most critical issues to be tackled with. And I don't have an easy solution for that.
No, but maybe is the transition from external motivation to intrinsic motivation.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we. Okay, thanks very much. And I've seen Janika that raised the hand for a very last question.
Yes, it's quite short, but maybe the tricky one. So my question would be how micro-credentials approach could be related or merged to this digital certificate, because the micro-credentials will be the mechanism how we are going to increase this digital skills level. But at the same time, there is no common understanding, no quality level, no European degree. So how it could be solved from the political or European level perspective? Thank you.
Indeed, a short question, but also a big one. No, thank you. And maybe the easy answer would be that actually this is something I think we're going to discuss in the next panel, so we'll come back to that later on. But it is, in any case, I can already mention that it's at the European level. Europe is investing strong in that, no, and really trying to push forward and mobilize people and stakeholders, universities, but also companies, to go along the route of, for example, micro credentials, but also the validation and recognition of informal and non-formal learning. So there's definitely we need to progress, and we need to work towards reaching these targets.